Commercial aircraft are engineered for absolute mechanical precision. Yet even the most advanced systems eventually come to a halt in a hangar like this, where every critical component is inspected and maintained by a human technician. Because there are no mandatory daily medical tests for engineers, the legal burden of safety falls directly on the individual. According to EASA Part 66.50, you have a strict duty of care to assess your own fitness before every shift. If you suspect your physical or mental condition is compromised, exercising your certification privileges is a direct violation of aviation law. This mandate places the technician's biology at the center of the airworthiness process. In this environment, your own physical and mental fitness functions as the most critical piece of safety equipment in the hangar. Scientifically, stress is any force, physical or psychological, that requires a system to modify itself to adapt. For a technician, excessive stress causes a measurable decline in the memory and concentration required to troubleshoot complex aircraft systems. This path shows how we manage that pressure. Defense strategies like denial or using alcohol only mask the symptoms while leaving the root stressor intact. Adaptive coping involves dealing directly with the source, whether that means delegating an overwhelming workload or seeking professional support. Choosing to mask symptoms through defense mechanisms leaves the underlying hazard active. The threat to airworthiness remains until the core stressor is identified and managed. Time pressure in the hangar is multidimensional. There is actual pressure, which comes from explicit management deadlines, and perceived pressure, where the hangar culture creates an unspoken expectation of speed. Then there is self-imposed pressure. This occurs when you set internal deadlines to finish a task before a shift change or a break. To your brain, the rush to catch a commuter train triggers the exact same chemical stress response as a manager shouting to meet a flight schedule. This internal urgency is deceptive. Your brain reacts by releasing hormones that compromise decision-making, making a self-imposed rush just as dangerous to aircraft safety as a commercial deadline. When pressured, human beings instinctively trade accuracy for speed. As the pace increases, due care and attention diminish, leading technicians to bypass the very checks designed to prevent disaster. The 1990 BAC 111 accident proves how fatal this trade-off can be. A maintenance manager, driven by the perceived pressure of a routine aircraft wash, bypassed the manual and installed the wrong-sized bolts on the windscreen. Mid-flight, the window blew out, nearly claiming the life of the captain. This aircraft wasn't even needed for flight until the next day. It reveals a terrifying reality. Catastrophic errors don't require a high-stakes flight emergency. They can be driven by entirely trivial, non-critical deadlines. We can map the limits of human attention using the Yerkes-Dodson curve. On the far left, work is so repetitive or menial that the brain's attention mechanisms shut down. In this state of underarousal, an engineer can stare directly at a major structural defect without actually perceiving it. At the opposite extreme, work overload induces a state of panic. This triggers a narrowing of attention, where the brain hyper-focuses on a single detail while filtering out critical, system-wide warnings. Safe maintenance requires staying at the peak of this curve. Technicians and supervisors must actively balance the workload to maintain a state of alert, engaged focus. Sleep is a complex biological repair process. Slow-wave NREM sleep restores the body's physical tissues, while REM sleep is required for cognitive processing and memory. Shift work disrupts both, often cutting off late-night REM cycles needed to retain new technical information. Our bodies follow a natural circadian rhythm. As this graph shows, core body temperature reaches its absolute lowest point between 4 and 6 a.m. This is the window of circadian low, where cognitive alertness and physiological performance reach their bottom. Historical data shows that catastrophic maintenance errors, such as the B737 double-engine oil loss, frequently initiate during this pre-dawn trough, when the brain's self-monitoring capability is at its lowest. Human biology is poorly equipped for night work. To maximize daytime flight revenue, heavy maintenance is relegated to the very hours when the human error potential is biologically highest. Subjective fatigue is your personal perception of how tired you feel. If you are motivated to finish an urgent repair, a surge of adrenaline can mask this feeling, tricking you into believing you are wide awake. However, your physiological fatigue remains. This is the biological reality of cellular exhaustion, and regardless of the adrenaline you feel, your reaction times and motor skills are severely degraded. You cannot negotiate with cellular fatigue. Motivation can never replace rest. A baseline of 1 hour of high-quality sleep is required to sustain just 2 hours of safe activity. This chart shows alcohol's metabolic clearance rate. Notice that the downward slope actually flattens and slows down when you sleep. It is biologically impossible to sober up quickly using coffee or rest. The body removes toxins at a strictly fixed pace. Even over-the-counter medications are hazardous. Antihistamines chemically induce severe drowsiness. Meanwhile, decongestants containing pseudoephedrine cause physical tremors that make it impossible to safely calibrate sensitive instruments. Illicit drugs like cannabis are even more deceptive. Research shows they impair concentration and the ability to execute reasoned judgments for up to 24 hours after use. Introducing any chemical that alters the central nervous system compromises your biological capacity to certify an aircraft. Aviation authorities are clear. Airworthiness gives absolute precedence over flight schedules. When human factors are compromised, you have a professional obligation to use your stop work authority to block commercial pressure. Systems and manuals are secondary to the person using them. The ultimate safety net for any aircraft is the uncompromised physical health and the professional integrity of the engineer.